So welcome back from lunch. It is my pleasure to begin with the last of the three sessions for the day. As Stefan indicated, today's conversation is essentially about capacity building. This session would also follow the same perspective, but from the perspective of building capacities around mobilizing sustainable financing. We on the podium very much appreciate what it takes to have a session after lunch. So we'll try and make it very interactive by keeping the conversation on this part of the room pretty short and allow for engagement towards the end of the hour. So my name is Kobina, Annim, and I'm the National Statistician for the Ghana Statistical Service. I also co-chair the high-level group on partnership, coordination, and capacity building. I guess it is the reason why I've been asked to moderate this session, because part of my mandate together with ELSA is to ensure that across the 22 member countries, we ensure partnership coordination and also do that in the context of capacity. So as I indicated, since morning, we've been talking about capacity building from three perspectives: capacity building that is relevant, that is resilient, and agile for the national statistical system. From the front of mobilizing sustainable financing, we are also looking at it from three perspectives. One is, how do we ensure that the financing that we have is adequate? Two, how do we ensure that the financing that we have is predictable? And thirdly, to ensure that the funding that we have is sustainable. I believe that since morning we've been hearing of the issue of financing from different perspectives, either financing from a domestic resource mobilization perspective, financing from a development finance perspective, or financing from a private sector perspective. As I indicated, what we have to do is to make sure that this financing achieves three objectives. One, it is adequate. Two, it is predictable. And three, it is sustainable. Before I hand over to my panelists, I'm going to share with you a few minutes my perspective on this matter. And the question that I ask myself is, what do we do as a statistical community to make this request for adequate, predictable, and sustainable financing more predictable? I guess what we are doing here from the perspective of the high-level group on partnership, coordination, and capacity building is to ensure that we influence the languaging on the Financing for Development Conference. For those of us who are not aware, we've had three series of the Financing for Development Conference. The last one, which was in 2015 in Addis Ababa, and the next one will be in Seville in June, July, Spain this year. And as a high-level group for partnership, coordination, and capacity building, we have thought through the need to make our case more compelling by trying to change the language in the outcome document. So in the past few months, we've been engaging quite a number of you at different levels. The high-level group had the opportunity to look at the elements document before the second PrepCom, and also looked at it when the zero outcome document was out. We say happily that gradually the narrative on data and statistics have been strengthened in the document. Among the issues that we have ensured that it goes into the Financing for Development Conference is around the issues of not restricting statistics to only monitoring, but making sure that statistics touches on one, evaluation, and more importantly, policy design. The second area that we've highlighted in the zero document for possible inclusion is around the issue of ensuring that statistics is a cross-cutting issue. Again, for those of us who are familiar with the document from the Addis Ababa agenda, it had 8 thematic areas, and our request going into the fourth Financing for Development document is to ensure that across the 8 thematic areas, data and statistics is reflected across all these areas. This morning, one thing that came up has to do with the expanded scope of people in the data ecosystem and what role do we have to play as those of us in the statistical ecosystem. Issues of governance, issues of infrastructure, issues of sharing of data is prominent. So we are looking forward to ensuring that the outcome document for the Financing for Development Conference will reflect issues around how at the global level, the regional level, national and local level, governance, infrastructure, and data sharing are clearly stated in there. One of the mandates of the high-level group, as we all would know, is the organization of the World Data Forum, the recent one, which was in Medellin, Colombia, which led to the Medellin framework calling for action on the data for sustainable development. On the back of the Cape Town document and also on the back of the data revolution, another ask for the Financing for Development Conference is to ensure that we have reflected this strongly from the perspective of science and technology. Before I introduce my panelists, I sit here and I ask myself, this morning a couple of people said it, financing is shrinking. How do we reposition ourselves as a national statistical community to take advantage of this? Do we continue to provide statistics in the way that we are doing it, or beyond the survey conference, we're going to adhere to the promises that we are giving in the document? So that, for instance, as a statistical community, we put statistics out there that would influence policy rather than making statistics as a monitoring tool. We put statistics out there that will give policymakers an opportunity to choose between different policy options. So on the backdrop of these, we have excellent panelists to walk us through the issues. What Stefan suffered this morning, I think I'm going through the same from a gender perspective. But having said that, I'll go ahead and introduce my three panelists. To my immediate left is a co-member of the high-level group for partnership, coordination, and capacity building in the person of Miosotis, Rivas, Pena, who is the Director General for the Dominican Republic National Statistical Office. To my immediate right is Toril-Iren, who is the Assistant Director for NORAD Norway. And 2 steps away to my right, I have Orria, who is also with UNDP, currently with the portfolio of lead advisor on public finance at UNDP. We're going to start the conversation by asking Orria the first question. In the context of financing for development, we often hear that there are substantial challenges in getting needed data and statistics to inform decision-making at national level. What are the main challenges and opportunities in your view? Please stick to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I first want to say thank you for inviting us and giving us this opportunity as UNDP and as the Sustainable Finance Hub within UNDP. A disclaimer, I'm not a statistics expert, and I work on finance, but this is precisely the subject matter, right, that we want to bring together this work. As for challenges, and we had these discussions throughout the preparatory committee-related sessions and in the most recent conference that we organized at the end of January, the public finance dialogues, with that intention to bring together the whole of society and the whole of government approach to discussing finance, including members of National Statistics Office. Obviously, we're talking about an issue and a gradual issue of resources. And in doing so, the question is, we're talking about financing for what exactly? And financing how? And that brings me to the point of, well, yes, there is a need to continue the feeding up that information on the statistics, and we are aware of the different metrics that, well, are being added to your shoulders, right? But we also need to think of that data that has to do with the cooking of the financing data, right? And that is generally put in the hands of diverse systems and units and departments and ministries. And this is precisely the other big challenge. There is a clear fragmentation in the structures and in the institutions that we are trying, and we see that we are trying to unify. Traditionally, we see how through our work, and even as UNDP, through our work, through the National Planning Department and National Planning Offices, yes, the Statistics Office were close by. But as we deal with Ministries of Finance, we see the clear gap. So how do we bring together the Statistics Office to be, as we were saying with some of the colleagues, the dock station of all the entries of financing data? And with that goes the third challenge, the issue of capacity. capacity, and it was mentioned by Professor Samuel, on obviously building that infrastructure, but there is a whole world that has been untapped that we need to strengthen, which has to do with automatization of systems, right? And within it, the interoperability of systems, which is a word that it's really hard to pronounce, and therefore is very hard also to put in place. So in a nutshell, resources, coordination, capacity, but capacity very much linked to that agenda of digitalization. Concrete examples where we are putting forward this agenda, and can also give some highlights on where the challenges are. As UNDP, we start working with the EU Tax Observatory to identify tax gap and, well, to work on tax incidence analysis. There are very few tax databases. How can the cooperation with the Statistics Office can be promoted? So we did work under the INFF initiative to encourage this to happen. This has and is happening at the moment in Colombia, in Brazil, in Bhutan. And we are looking into, well, Kenya with the same perspective to see how, well, we can bring together the different stakeholders. But it is a beginning. But at least we are starting to get there. There's the issue of the coordination. As I mentioned, the Integrated National Financing Frameworks is an initiative that came out of the Addis Ababa Action Agenda 10 years ago, and it's bringing together public, private, that whole of society and whole of government. So yeah, I know I'm going a little bit beyond, but this is the second example, and I'm going to finish with this. We did a survey recently. Out of the 33 oversight committees in different countries, only 12 included, per the agreement of the Ministries of Finance, the National Statistics Office. So how do we embark at national level much more strongly to build that internal coherence to, well, make sure that we are being seated at the table? So with that, I'm going to pass it over. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for those useful interventions. I will now turn to Miosotis with a question. What is the national framework that promotes the coherent and comprehensive allocation of funds for the national statistical system?
Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for the question, and also I want to maybe refer also to the regional level. Not in the case of that we have existing framework, but I want to say that at the regional level, talking about from the Latin American and the Caribbean region, we don't have a specific framework to promote those coherent and comprehensive allocation of resources, but also we have efforts around the Statistical Conference of the Americas working on capacity building. Now that most of the time also is bringing resources to work with the national statistical system, but also with the national and statistical organizations and office. And what you mentioned about, because I think that is a good opportunity to work from both the regional and the national level, is that what you are mentioned about the work that the high level group of capacity building is coordination, partnership coordination and capacity building is doing in trying to influence the negotiation of the Financial for Development Conference. And we need to have, as we are doing in the Dominican Republic, having all the materials that you are producing or that we are producing, because the Dominican Republic now is part of the 22 countries that belong to the high-level group, and how we can use those instruments also to influence the position of the Dominican Republic at the global level, and we are working on that in the country, and mention that from the UNDP, the colleague from UNDP was mentioned. In the Dominican Republic, we are working with the integrated financial framework, and it belongs to the Ministry of Economy that is the leading the negotiations, but something that I leading with Antesa the construction of the framework. But at the same time, one of my reflection is that when you don't have the finance ministry involved on those issues, it is important to bring them to that part of a discussion in the country. But I wanna have some time to take to mention about how we in the Dominican Republic we're moved to allocate resources to the produce of statistics, and data, and the national we have a framework that is our national development strategy from 2030, that we align with the SDG, and the strategy has an instrument that called the Public Sector's National Pluriannual Plan that provide the framework when we work around policies that are prioritized to address all the development in a government mandate to address how is the work that we are as institution, governmental institution, are going to work. And for example, the last period that run from the 2021 to the 2024, there was selected 33 policies that were prioritized, having one specific on data and statistics for decision making and policies based on evidence. So with those 33 policies are then lowered into a plan and sectoral plan, which allow us as a National Statistical Office to be part of the coordination mechanism that are established to address the priorities that this sector is going to work. It's not work in all the sectors that we wanted, but with all those sectors that are available and want to work with us. So we sit in the table and it's provide this kind of mechanism when we can guarantee that funds are allocated for work in the specific amount and necessities that our needs that those sectors have in terms of data and statistics.
Thank you very much, Miosotis. We'll now turn to our third speaker, Toril, who will respond to the question. We see that international development assistance to the field of statistics, in this case, statistical capacity building, is far below the global needs. So specifically, we want you to answer, what role can you as a donor play when it comes to strengthening national statistical systems?
Thank you very much. Thank you for that question. I cannot promise a very easy answer, but I'll give it a try. So we've heard through the two previous panels also that there is a real pressure on official development assistance. The scarcity of resources that we're now facing has to be a push for us to come together and innovate. I think it's not a coincidence also that the previous financing for development conferences all came in the wake of different forms of global economic crisis. And crisis does give us a little bit of a push to be a bit more creative of how we're thinking about the financing space. And when it comes to financing capacity development statistics, there is definitely potential to think differently. We know that there is a lot of fragmentation in the field of support to data and statistics. A lot of the investments that are happening are not happening with the headline of data or statistics. They might be happening in bigger programs that are sector-oriented, whether it's on climate change or health or education. So if we're able to come together as a community to identify these and bring it together, and instead of thinking, what more funding can we bring what fresh funding can we bring to the space, rather think of how we can do it better. And here I think we need to move then the discussion from thinking about quantity to quality. If we can get behind a few principles of how official development aid is used to strengthen national statistical systems, I think we can move forward here. And I have some suggestions to what these principles can be, and I think there is a momentum now also tied to the Financing for Development Conference and the general scarcity of financing. One is that we have to make sure that funding that is going to national statistics and data, whether it's in a sector or whether it is to the statistical offices, are not creating parallel systems of data monitoring or coordination or production or use. So really coming together and identifying this. We've asked a few of our partners on, if there is an overview of how much is actually spent on data and statistics in a particular country. And it's very hard to find. And if you can't find it, you can't also interrogate it and make sure that it's used in the best possible way for a common system. I think another thing that we have to make sure is that we're, as development partners, we are being honest when there is gaps, when there is no data in the education sector or in another critical sector. Let's just make sure that we highlight that instead of always using other proxies to work around it. Because identifying the gaps really can make a case for improving the investments. If we're working around it, it's not always easy to see what the investments are needed. Let me see, there's one other point that was very good, but I'll save that one for later. I just wanted to say, so I manage a portfolio for governance and public finance. And part of our engagement with the Statistical Office is that when we're dealing with the tax administrations, when we're dealing with the ministries of finance, a lot of the problems that they're identifying is related to lack of data, lack of coordinated responses here, and a lot of the solutions are within the data and statistical community. So if there's a way that we as donors also can help country-level actors and implementing partners to use these gaps in communication and information sharing to improve the system, then that's something we'll be very happy to engage with.
Thank you very much, Toril. Colleagues, having heard from the three panelists, I think the key message here is that we within the statistical community cannot be passive in the space of development financing. We need to play an active role from the perspective of how do we present statistics in a manner that it would help with the mobilization of resources, either domestically, development finance, or private finance. So clearly, there's the need for us to rethink our participation in that space, both as the negotiations are going on, and secondly, in terms of the products that we're putting out there. We're just going to give each panelist another couple of minutes for a second round of questions, then we're going to open up, this time starting with Miosotis. Could you share with us some strategy used for the proper allocation for internal and external resources in the production of official statistics?
Yes, thank you, Sam. As I mentioned before, we have this national pluriannual plan, which translated into sectoral plans for each of those 33 policies that I mentioned. For the next period will be 17 policies, but so for each one of the policy, the government create kind of mechanisms like cabinets, commission, working groups, when we were gathering together, and as you mentioned, Toril, like not trying to look together innovative ways to address the problems that we have as a country. And we define what we need for the period of mandate that we have. For example, just to give you the instrument, we have our agenda, Digital Agenda 2030, that is like the roadmap that guide the country or guide us as a nation in terms of what is the technological adaptation that we want to have. And in this digital agenda contemplates the produce of data in different areas, which allow not just the National Statistical Office, but also the other institutions that needed data to mobilize resources, internal and external resources. So what is our strategy? And that is very important because we have in our national surveys of household or economic activity, we have a specific modules where we receive from the domestic budget, we receive and allocate resources to produce the core module. But then if you want to if you need to add something specific, so is it the institution that has ensured to look for the money or the resources to bring to the National Statistical Office. Just in this case, from national for the digital agenda, just to give you an example, we are producing some kind of information during the 2021 to 2024, and in terms of collective information for measurement the significant connectivity, electronic government, provide information and data to produce a program from digital basket for female heads households, and also a lot of information to characterize the use of ITC in companies, among others. Finally, I guess that is important because at the end, the institution have they mobilize resources maybe for the external cooperation, but at the same time, Dominican Republic is a country in graduation, so we are receiving less cooperation. Also, it is very difficult also to we can use like private sector to start working on those issues and try to mobilize resources also from that part of the sectors of the Dominican Republic.
Thank you very much, Miosotis. I'll now turn to Orria. Based on your experience, what do you think are the good approaches or mechanisms to strengthen national financing of official statistics?
Thank you very much. And allow me to take it directly from that sentence that Toril was referring to. We are all aware that there is a need to do much more, and we are being asked to do much more and deliver continuously much more with less. So there is a need to be, to ensure that we do it better without finding proxies, but so we follow that straight path, and we identify those solutions that I'm going to share with you a little bit of these examples. I also want to put an emphasis on the approach that, because of the reality nowadays, as UNDP, we want to put forward through South-South cooperation exchanges and triangular cooperation exchanges, right? There is a need to identify better the good practices and where ideas are taken forward and where tools are actually working, where we know that metrics are not being multiplied but simplified, and where we are making the investment case for National Statistic Office to be there and to be nationally funded and strategically, sustainably funded. And again, I'm coming as the public finance angle of work. So, and that's why I was referring to the nationally funded. Of course, we are talking about financing for development, and we need to know how we're bringing it all together. But we believe that the fundamentals of it have to be institutionalized at country level. So one case where through that INFF work and when looking into the different cases, I thought it was very interesting to highlight is in Mongolia. In Mongolia, the National Statistic Office is a core part of the INFF process, together with Ministries of Finance and the Ministry of Finance. And when the financing strategy was approved, the institution in charge of holding the pen for all of the monitoring, but all the specific statistics that will connect financing data with development outcomes data, with the outcomes, was in the top of the pyramid, was the National Statistic Office. Based on that, they are working on the creation of a database on SDG financing. Again, this is a fantastic entry, and there is a lot to do, because the big question now that comes is, where are we on SDG tracking of expenditures? Well, who is managing that information? Is the the Ministry of Finance, is the National Statistic Office, is the Budget Directorate within the Ministries of Finance? Where is the data containing the information on, where are the loans coming, where are the remittances coming? How do we get information on all that data? And this is another example that we were trying to put forward in Namibia, in Rwanda, in Cape Verde, and in Egypt, where we were trying to look into, okay, let's bring together those different systems and see how we can get a clear picture of what is coming in, including through ODA, including through foreign direct investment, including through the national revenue authorities too. And then how is this being spent for the SDGs, so that then we can link where is the money coming from and how it is helping to achieve the SDGs. And there is also clearly making the case for investing in the national statistic offices. So those two examples I wanted to share, the Mongolia and this other, which was made under this rubric of international integrated financing frameworks within the INFF. But allow me also to say there is this other ongoing initiative, the Power of Data, which is, you might have heard, it's a high impact initiative that was approved by the General Assembly. There is an initiative that is precisely looking into that intersection and the engagement and the direct institutional engagement of the National Statistics Office with the Ministries of Finance. With that, we can make the case where we see the added value, and as I was saying at the beginning, the role of, the coordinated role of the National Statistics Office to make those system changes we're aiming. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I would want to highlight the role that the high-level group for partnership coordination and capacity building has played in the FFD4 process, which currently is co-led by 4 countries, Norway being part of it, Zambia being part of it, Nepal, and Mexico. Toril with NORAD has supported us throughout this process in ensuring that we get the languaging right to influence the process. Our engagement with individual member states points to the fact that we are different levels of knowledge and awareness in this space of financing for development conference. So my last question, which goes to Toril, has to do with what is the real potential for us as a statistical community on the financing for development that we are pursuing a change in the narrative. Toril, please.
Thank you very much. And I really want to also highlight the work that the high-level group has done. Really critical work of both trying to simplify the messages that is needed so that it can easily translate to negotiators who are non-technical experts when it comes to data and statistics. And this is really valuable. FFD process now, I think, is very timely, and I think particularly because there is a need now to look at domestic public finance and international public finance under one. So how can we use the intersection between development aid and other forms of international public finance to strengthen the systems, the national system for domestic resource mobilization. And this doesn't mean that I'm ignoring the private sector in this. This is also an important part of the picture. But I think a strong system for public sector financing, management of data, and managing the results, linking up to policies, is a precondition for inviting in the private sector. And also private sector is not my area of expertise, so I shouldn't be talking to that so much. But throughout the whole document of the financing for development, we're talking about domestic public finance. We're talking about international development cooperation. We're talking about debt, systemic issues. All of these have very specific data and statistics needs. And there's a real opportunity to have a clear ask for each of the chapters. And that's why we've been talking about this more as a cross-cutting issues. We're not investing only in data and statistics to be able to monitor global commitments, so extracting data from countries to be able to say something about global development commitments. We should rather flip it on its head and say we're investing in national systems for data and statistics to be available for national development planning and monitoring, and then using it to also monitor the global processes because they're highly interlinked. And I think the statistical community can really play a part also in talking about how can we implement this. There is, I think, a resistance to creating new initiatives or agreeing to commitments that don't have a pathway for being implemented or taken forward. But in the international community for statistics and data, there are many initiatives and platforms. I think also because there's been a scarcity of financing over a long period of time, so there's been a need to try to mobilize. But maybe this is a time to look at how are these different initiatives complementing each other, so that we can be clear for member states who will be doing the negotiating, what is the pathway for implementing this. And then just lastly, my hope is that in 2015, when we had the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, one thing that came out of that was the Addis Ababa Tax Initiative. The Addis Ababa Tax Initiative was a result of many member states really realizing that the level of ambition on tax wasn't as high as they wanted in the final negotiated document. So they came together around a few commitments that elevated the level of ambition, and see how can we mobilize this in the margins of the FFD process. And for many countries, as for Norway, this meant that we got a commitment to double development aid to tax and domestic resource mobilization. Something similar is definitely possible now with the momentum that we have on tax and statistics. If there are key countries that would like to come together to look at, how can we pull out the commitments for statistics and data throughout the documents, either just rally around them and say we're committing to implementing this, or moving beyond and saying, we would like to have an ambition level that is higher than this. That's possible. It's not the formal process of FFD, but using the momentum of the discussions that are taking place now means that, we can definitely have associated outcomes regardless of where we end up. But it doesn't mean that you should give up, and I think you should talk to Professor Sam here about that.
Thank you very much, Toril. We did promise at the beginning that we're going to allow for some questions. We still have 16 minutes on our hour. So having heard from the panelists, we would open up for distinguished delegates to come up with their issues for clarification and suggestions. The floor is open, please. Okay, so we'll start with our colleague from Somalia and then move to our colleague from ECA, and the third from ADB.
Maybe probably it's ECA that have the floor, because my mic is...
Please, go ahead. Struggling to hear you. So can we get ECA to go?
Okay, thank you, Chair. And I guess they will give the floor to Somalia later on. I would like to share with you some successful approaches in mobilizing sustainable financing for official statistics in Africa. I think it's a good opportunity to do so. As you know, sustainable financing for official statistics in Africa has been a critical issue as mentioned, given the growing demand for high-quality data to support policy formulation, development planning, and monitoring frameworks like the African Union Agenda 2063, we call it the Africa We Want, and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Several approaches have been successfully implemented to mobilize sustainable financing for statistics in Africa, and I would like really to share with you. First of all, we have what we call the National Budget Allocation for Statistics. One of the most significant commitments to sustainable financing for official statistics in Africa is the decision to allocate at least 0.15%, it looks like a statistical error, it is not, of the national budget to statistical activities. This recommendation was endorsed by African governments through the African Union Specialized Technical Committee on Finance, Monetary Affairs, Economic Planning, and Integration. Even if implementation remains uneven across the continent, as many governments still struggle to reach this target due to competing budget priorities, some countries, such as Cape Verde, have increased their financial allocation for statistics in line with these commitments, allowing their national statistical offices to conduct regular survey, update statistical methodology, and invest in digital collection systems. Another experience is establishment of statistical funds in Africa. The African Charter on Statistics, adopted by the African Union in 2009, emphasizes the importance of sustainable financing and encourages the creation of national and regional statistical funds to support the development of statistical systems. Several African countries have set up statistical funds to ensure stable financing of official statistics. For example, Senegal establishes a national statistique development fund, Fonds National de Développement de la Statistique en français, to pool resources from government allocations, donors, and private sector's contribution. This fund ensures sustained financing for data collection, processing, and dissemination. It was also the case for Chad and Mali, and many others are really contemplating to do so. We also have what we call the public-private partnership.
Please, so that we can get others to make comments. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm sharing a continental experience. That's why it is taking probably more time. We have what we call a private-public partnership in innovative financial mechanism. And this has been implemented in many countries, like, for example, in South Sudan. For instance, the Private Bank Association is financing the CPI data collection because it is important for them. Kenya National Bureau of Statistics is working in close collaboration with telecom companies, high-tech sectors to fund specific statistical projects, such as mobile data collections and big data analysis. Nigeria, for example, the government has explored crowdfunding initiative to support data collection exercise, particularly for large-scale survey. And lastly, integration of statistics into national development planning, because this is important. A successful strategy for mobilizing sustainable financing is ensuring that statistical development is fully integrated into national development plan and budgeting framework. Without that, it is difficult. We are taking, for example, the case of Botswana. The government have embedded statistical production.
Can I kindly request that we get ADB and Somalia?
Yes, I have my last sentence. This means that really this is the way to go, whereby we need Africa to stand by its own solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. ADB, I don't think you'd also make a continental submission that would take that long. May I request you to keep it under a minute, please? AFDB.
It's not on? Yes. Oh, it's on now. Thank you. No, I will not be as long as ECA. Chair, 3 important points. One has been mentioned by Joseph, so I won't come to that, by ECA. The first point is on the insubordinate relationship between the National Statistics Office and the Ministry of Finance. While National Statistics Offices are fundamental, they, together with Ministry of Finance, they are subordinate. Most, in Africa at least, most of the National Statistics Offices report to Ministries of Finance. So the bargaining power is quite low in terms of resources and so on and so forth. So I think it's important for us to drum up support for them at the regional and international level for them to be empowered. A prophet is never honored in their own home. So we need to support the NSOs in that area. The second point is the need for removing fragmentation. Doing national strategies of statistics, national strategies for development of statistics is the way to go, because by doing that, you're planning together as a country, as sectors and National Statistics Office, what to support and when, so that there's no fragmentation. So NSDSs are the way to go. Lastly, and the point which was raised by Joseph, I support him, that it's important to integrate NSDSs into the national development plans as a process, not only as at the end, but as a process. And that's the way we'll have statistics as an enabler for ensuring accountability and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleague from Somalia, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, the challenge of sustainable financing is critical issue for national statistical offices in developing countries where limited domestic revenues and competing priorities often constrain investment in statistical systems. However, reliable and timely statistics are essential for evidence-based policy making, development planning, and monitoring progress toward national and global goals, serving as a critical foundation for decision making. To address this challenge, we must adopt a holistic approach. The number one is domestic revenue mobilization. Governments must recognize statistics as a public good and prioritize funding for NSOs in national budgets. This requires advocacy to demonstrate the value of statistics in driving growth, improving governance, and achieving development goals. Number two, which is really important, is innovative financing mechanisms. Therefore, exploring innovative financing models such as statistical funds or partnership with the private sector can provide additional resources. For example, leveraging private sector data or establishing joint initiatives can reduce costs and enhance data quality. Number three, development partner support is also important. While domestic financing is essential, development partners play a crucial role in bridging gaps, particularly in capacity building and technical assistance. However, this support should be aligned with national priorities and designed to build long-term sustainability rather than creating dependence. There is also opportunities to investing in modern technologies such as digital data collection tools and cloud-based platforms can also reduce operational costs and improve efficiency. Additionally, regional collaboration and resource sharing among NSOs can optimize limited resources. And finally, advocacy and awareness is really important. Strengthening the case for statistics requires continuous advocacy at the highest levels of government and among stakeholders. Demonstrating the tangible impact of statistics on policy outcomes and development goals can help secure sustained funding. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the 3 submissions. All were suggestions going forward. We'll open up for another round of questions if there are any. While we wait, let me highlight something that came up this morning at the Swiss event. The conversation on mobilizing sustainable financing is not a conversation only for those of us in the global south. It's a conversation for us collectively. And some of the reasons that were alluded to had to do with the submissions that we are making in the Financing for Development outcome document. So for instance, as resources continue to shrink, national statistical offices, we are saying that we don't want to continue to be producing only the GDPs, the inflation and things like that. What we want to be producing are issues around productivity that enables us to see how we can change GDP, issues around a regular basis for rebasing our CPI. Those of us from the Global South, we know even the 5 years recommendation, we miss it. So this conversation is really not just for NSOs in the Global South, but as resources, financial resources continue to shrink, how do we realign our capacities as a national statistical community to ensure that we get closer to resource mobilization? So we'll be happy to hear from the issue partners, especially of the HLG, on how this issue of shrinking resources is going to inform your change in orientation post the FFD4. Yes. Okay. So we take from Claire, then Piedad.
Thank you, Professor, for the invitation. I mean, I think, obviously the challenges that have been raised here around financing are real and serious and likely to be long-term. So I think this is exactly the discussion that we all need to have. And I think, as issue partners to the HLG, the answers that we would suggest have all, I think, been already mentioned on the panel. I think, where we do expect funding to be restricted in the near term, we obviously have an obligation to make sure that we're absolutely making the best of every available dollar that we have. Doing that requires both the information to understand where the money's already going, as Toril has said, and then the advocacy to make sure that, where sometimes we see there are sort of institutional dynamics, political dynamics that make it quite difficult to shift the trajectories of funding onto a more sustainable and coherent and rational path. Obviously, there is a sort of advocacy agenda there for all of us around making sure that the solutions to that are ones which make sense collectively as well as for each individual institution that's involved. And sometimes those are, as we all know, in many areas of life, sometimes there is a challenge there. I think it was great to, I think a colleague from UNDP has already mentioned the power of data. It's a sort of explicitly constructed as one of the high impact initiatives that were launched in September 2023 to tackle exactly that point, to be a political platform to mobilize advocacy around the importance of data and statistics as an accelerator for the SDGs, for the kind of progress that we all want to see. And I think there are many examples, including from many of you on the platform, about where that is starting to just bend that curve very slightly around the political momentum for data and statistics. So I think, we can't there is no magic wand here, and there's nothing that's going to suddenly release huge flows of funding. But I think there are things that we can do, all of us, to overcome some of the institutional challenges that prevent us from making the very best use of every available dollar. And clearly FFD is a unique political opportunity to do that. And we're absolutely ready to work with everybody here to try to make the best of that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Piedad, please.
Thank you. So after listening to this panel, I just want to highlight that on the bright side, it's great to see a strong positioning on South-South cooperation. Within the Latin American region, we constantly have SSC activities either bilaterally or through the ICLAC. Alongside Colombia's cooperation agency, we are carrying out the South-South cooperation project, making inclusive data the norm. as we are in a seminar on capacity development and that 3 years ago, the Statistical Commission approved the voluntary conceptual framework on measurement of SC, which are the capacities that we need to strengthen to make SSC more visible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of minutes to the hour. I'm just going to give each panel member under 1 minute for a concluding word. Then I conclude, starting with Orria.
Thank you, Monsieur Chair, for giving me this 1 minute. I think we've said it, and I think the very good examples we heard from ECA colleague and obviously with my public finance hat, I do believe that there is a need to build that institutional setup to ensure that public finance and the national budgets cover the National Statistics Office. You know, not to name the intervention, but the power of data is there. The power of data to connect with resources, financing related data about the resources is there, but also you hold the power of data to connect resources with results. So the message is, well, let's build that investment case, or maybe let's talk about the cost of inaction and the cost that will take not to fund National Statistics Office. What would it mean for a country to deliver? What would it mean? And maybe we need to turn the information that other way around to come into that investment case. At least that's what we're looking in UNDP through our public finance initiatives. We're questioning this lack of coherence through the institutions, and well, we're willing to ensure that we support you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I turn to Toril.
Thank you. I mean, simplistically, we can say that what we need is we need the money, we need the data, and we need the political will to move the two in the right direction. But a little bit more complex. Financing is about increasing revenues, obviously, but it's also about reducing revenue losses. And I think there's definitely a case to be made for better use of data and statistics to highlight revenue losses through bad investments that are made on weak foundation of data or evidence. So let's be a bit creative in how we're making our cases to different audiences. I think and then just lastly, I think in this room, I think is making the case for multilateralism in this regard. It's about, we unite around some principles, and then the composition and the design of each solution will be different for different countries, but then definitely bringing it back to the principles and the values of the transparency and efficiency and the independence, so that we can have good checks and balances, making sure that the limited money that we have for this field, but also for financing development, is used in the best possible way, I think.
Thank you. Miosotis, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think that is my final remarks is a good opportunity at a global level, but this opportunity to mobilize resources needs a more proactive role. More leadership from the National Statistical Office, and also, as I mentioned in other scenarios, is to try to understand that there is others in the field that need our support, and it is not a case of us, because most of the time we are just thinking about the National Statistical Office. But my conversation this year with the Minister of Finance of the Dominican Republic, all the time he told me, but it is you and 10 others, that need a resource. It's you and whatever, hundreds, and he has a pressure on him. But as you mentioned, Toril, it's not about just to bring more resources, but also how we make more efficiency that the resources that we are receiving, that the government is receiving, agencies are receiving, and data can help the Minister of Finance to have more effectively public expenditure. And we try also to create the cases to realize that kind of benefits for the Minister of Finance in that case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miosotis. Colleagues, we are a couple of minutes after the hour. A couple of issues from my side. Clearly, the capacity building from the perspective of mobilizing sustainable financing has to do with capacity to further engage with government and producing statistics in a way that would help countries, the global community, local level, mobilize more resources, of which its rippling effect would lead to financing for the work that we do, that is data and statistics. We've talked extensively about the Financing for Development Conference. I'm happy to announce that on Tuesday in the afternoon, there'll be a session in Conference Room 8, still furthering the conversation on the Financing for Development. Together with Vibeke, with the UNSC and myself, we've made some compact documentation that all of you can use in engaging your permanent missions. It's the permanent missions that are negotiating on behalf of our respective countries to ensure that the narrative on data and statistics is strengthened in that document. So we invite you to join us for the Tuesday afternoon event in Conference Room 8. And at the same time, if you need further documentation to help with your documentation, we are happy to do that. In conclusion, this statistical community going forward has accepted to wear a development finance hat to complement the traditional work that we do. Distinguished delegates, join me to congratulate the panelists for such an insightful engagement in the past 1 hour. Thank you very much.